Straight Life by Art and Lori Pepper. Welcome to pages 282 through 288 in my reading of Straight Life, and this is part 3 of the San Quentin chapter. In this episode, Art gets involved in a confusing and frightening prison transaction. In part 2, Art was finding the brutality and ugliness of life in San Quentin unendurable. In part 3, his friends help him learn to cope. This section is called Selling Penn. Here's Art's narrative. I started talking to little Ernie and Woody Woodward, a huge guy, solid muscle with fists like ham hocks, but a warm person who played tenor saxophone and painted pictures and loved me because I was a musician. He had committed so many armed robberies before he went to Quentin that they had him in the newspaper, the all-time winner of armed robberies with violence. He'd done about 200 of them up and down the coast. I talked to Jerry Mayer, a Richard Widmark type, slender, with steel cold blue eyes. I'd seen him in situations with guys that were 10 times bigger than him, and meaner, you would think, and he was always at ease, had no fear at all. I talked with these people and others. I knew so many. Frank Ortiz was there and Reuben. I asked them, "Man, how do you stand it? What do? I don't want to die here. How do I survive?" And I think it was Jerry Mayer who told me, "You have to loosen your cap." He was kind of joking. He said, "I got a cap wrench, man, if you want it." He meant you've got to get a little crazy and a little dingy when you get too uptight. He told me, "Act like you're crazy. It'll keep these idiots away from you. Make noises, talk to yourself, mumble, sing to yourself and groan, act weird." That's what I'd done in Terminal Island, but it was nothing to the extent that I did it in San Quentin. I went completely out of it. When I went to the shower, I would stumble like the people in Fort Worth. I'd kick my feet and go, "Whoa." I'd look at people and go, "Whoa." I'd get in the shower and throw the soap up in the air. I'd put the water in my mouth and scream, "Ah!" They'd look at me, and then they'd move away so I could shower. I would bad rap people. It's a miracle I wasn't killed. I acted like a real maniac and the most violent person imaginable. I'd go to the mess hall with John Wallach. We were in Fort Worth together. We'd go to eat, and instead of sticking the food in my mouth, I'd stick it in my cheek or bury my head in the plate. We'd put our arms around the plates and eat like animals, slurping and slobbering. I took every kind of pill, every single thing I could get my hands on, no matter what it was. There were some pills, they called them black and whites, Dilantin and phenobarbital. They were for epileptics. Most people were afraid to take them because they really messed you up. But they gave you a nice high, so I took them all the time. I'd wake up early in my cell and get my can, and I'd take some wax paper or toilet paper and make a bomb, roll it up into a ball, and light it to heat the water and make some coffee. And I'd take the pills with my coffee and be wiped out when I staggered out of my cell. You lose your equilibrium, you can't walk. So I got a reputation for being really insane. People were afraid of me. And I found that the things I thought I wouldn't be able to live with, I was able to play over. I'd mumble to myself and slobber, and that's how I survived. There's nothing like being locked up. When I went to the guidance center at Chino in 60, we went by alphabetical order, and the name right before mine was Penn, William Penn. Penn was a nice guy, kind of sweet, slender. He had pretty skin. You know how a girl looks when she's young and she goes to the beach a lot? A blonde? When her hair is kind of brownish blonde on her arms and the sun hits it? Well, Penn had hairs on his arms like that. And he had real pretty hair, little curls. And he had beautiful blue eyes. He looked like a little sparrow. And he loved me because he loved jazz, and he'd follow me around. We were on the chain together to go to Quentin. They called Penn, Pepper, so we were handcuffed together. We got on the Gray Goose and we sat together. It just happened to work out that way. They took us off the bus at Soledad, and they called the names for the cells. And it's Penn, Pepper, in the same cell, which was nice because he's clean, very neat, and he adores me. I had someone to flatter me, and he's telling me the records he's got, and when he saw me at so-and-so, and how much he loved it, and how much his old lady loved it. The next morning, we got back on the bus, and it was the same thing. We sat together. So people see us come. We're handcuffed together. We eat together. We go through the physicals and the different things you go through when you go in. And we're always together because of our names. And evidently, a few people decided this cat was my kid, my punk, my girlfriend. You get very aware in prison. You're careful to observe things. It's a jungle. There might be a snake there or a centipede. You never walk around half conscious. When you go into a toilet, you look at every person. If you're in line, you look at everybody behind you. It becomes a habit. Eyes are always moving. So I noticed this one guy, kind of cold-eyed, who was watching me. He was about 5'9", and there was nothing violent looking about his build, nothing physical, but he had a scary way about him, and I never saw him talk to a living soul. I noticed him watching me. I'd be standing someplace in the upper yard, and I'd look over, and he'd be behind an iron girder looking at me. I'd look at him, and he'd lower his eyes and turn around. I'd look away and back quick, and he'd be staring at me again. He'd lower his head. I'd find myself in the canteen line, and there he'd be, standing at a distance, but I'd feel his presence, and I really started getting worried. I hit on a guy I knew. I said, "Man, don't look now. I don't want this cat to know I'm pinning him. But this cat, standing over by so-and-so." And I said real low, "Do you know that cat?" And my friend said, "I sure do, man. That guy has murdered 3. Everybody's terrified of him. Nobody messes with him, and he doesn't have anything to do with anybody. He's a real death shank type cat. He does everything single O." I hit on another guy. Same response. I hit on another guy. And he said, "Man, don't have any dealings with him and don't ever do anything he doesn't like or you're dead." I thought, what is this cat looking at me for? I hit on another guy and I copped out. I asked him, "Well, why do you think the cat's watching me?" The guy said, "Well, there's only one reason I can think of. He's a lifer. He's going to be here for life. He's looking at you. That means he has eyes for you." He wasn't a fruiter. See, the guys that are doing life, rather than just playing with themselves with books, they learn to make it with a man and think of the man as a woman. They're not fruiters in that sense of the word. Maybe if I was there for life, I'd do the same thing. I doubt it, though. Finally, one day, a guy that was a friend of Penn's, Bob, came up to me and said, "Wait a minute, don't look now, but now look. See that guy standing over there by the third girder?" I looked and said, "Oh man, are you kidding? That cat's been looking at me for weeks now. I'm terrified." Bob said, "Well, he approached me the other day. and he wants to make a meet with you. Bob said, I don't know what he wants, man, but you got to see him. You got to make a meet with him and find out. I said, okay. Tell him I'll see him downstairs in the lower yard. I go down to the handball court. The guy walks up to me. He says, Art Pepper? I say, yeah. He says, man, I hear you're a great musician. And right away I think, uh-oh, that's what the cat wants. He's intrigued with me. I say, yeah, why? He says, I've been watching you. I say, I know that, man. I could tell you were watching me. What's your story? I was trying to act tough. I was scared to death. He says, well, I've been watching you, man. And you got a lot of friends. A lot of friends. A lot of friends. I've been asking about you, quietly. I noticed that a lot of people like you. You talk to Chicanos. You talk to Swades. You talk to everybody. Everybody seems to like you. You have a lot of friends. I'm not like that. I'm here for murder. You've probably heard that. I'm here for murder a couple of times. And I've killed a couple of people in jail since I've been here. I don't think I'm ever going to get out. I don't like people. People don't like me. Then he says, I'm lonesome. And I think, oh God, here it is. The cat's lonesome. I say, yeah, well, I'm lonesome too. God, I'll say I'm lonesome, man. I'd give anything in the world if I weren't here and had my old lady or some chick that really dug me. He looked at me and he gave me the funniest look. He says, chick, that's a thing from another world. And I think, that's it. That's what the guy wants. He wants me. What am I going to say to him? What am I going to do? I'm looking in his eyes, and they're a dead, pale blue. There's nothing there. I say, yeah, man. Yeah, we're all lonely, man. I feel for you. At least I'm going to get out one of these days. He says, well, I just want you to understand my position, man. I'm lonely, and I can't stand it anymore, and I've got to have someone. I say, yeah? He says, I've got to have someone. I think, what am I going to do? He says, I've got to have someone. You know that little cat that you got? I didn't understand what he'd said. It didn't sink in. I was so scared. I thought he was going to hit on me. I said, what do you mean? He says, you know, Penn, your little friend. I say, Penn? Oh, you mean Penn. He says, yeah, Penn, your little friend. I say, well, what about him, man? He says, well, man, you're popular, like I told you. Here I am, all alone. And then he says, I've got things to offer, a lot to offer. I'm clean. He started telling me his good points. He says, I've killed a few people, but that was just circumstances. They got in my way and there was no way out. I had to do it. And he says, maybe I'm a little crazy. And I thought, a little? It was a cold day, Northern California, winds blowing. It must have been 30 degrees and I was sweating. He says, I've seen Mandy like looking at you. She'd give you anything you wanted, man. I've been looking and looking. That little guy, Penn, just turns me on. I really love him. And then the whole thing was clear to me. I said, well, great, man, great. I was so relieved. I said, oh, wonderful. I almost broke into some insane laughter. I was so scared I almost peed in my pants. I thought he was going to stab me right there because there's some strange people, man, and all the stories I'd heard about this guy. I said, well, that's great, man. Why don't you talk to him? And he says, I can't talk to him. That's your old lady, man. I say, no, he's not. He says, all right, now look it. You know, he wouldn't believe me. I tried to explain, but he thought I was trying to get out of making a deal. He says, all right, I'll tell you what. You decide what you want for him. I'm appealing to you now. I'm appealing to your good nature. You can have anything you want. With me, I'm hung here. I saw him. I like him. I want him. I need him. I have to have him. I know maybe you care for him too, but could you find somebody else, please? Could you do me a favor, please? You tell me how many cigarettes you want for him, and whatever I can give you outside of that. If any dope comes in, you're a dope fiend, right? I'll kill somebody and get some dope for you. You make a price, money-wise, meaning cigarettes, and I'll get it and pay it to you. I say, it isn't that way. He says, think it over. Decide what you want, and I'll talk to you again. I said, but, and he was gone. I'd read books about prison life and seen movies, but I'd never, ever heard of selling somebody for cigarettes. If I hadn't been involved, I would have laughed and laughed. It would have been a great story to tell, but I was involved and it wasn't funny. I went to Bob and ran down the conversation. I said, what am I going to do? He said, sell him. I said, he isn't mine. He said, any death play, any shank play involved? We're in it 50-50 if you want to do it that way, and we'll split the bread. I said, I can't do that. I cannot do that. The guy believes that you and Penn are making it. Nothing's going to change his mind. What else are you going to do? I said, I don't know what to do. He said, sell him. Sell him. If you don't sell him, I will. I'll go to him and tell him I got control over the cat, and he'll listen to me, and then you'll be out the bread. I saw that the guy was serious. This guy was a friend of Penn's, not of mine. He was a friend of Penn's from the street, this guy. I went to Penn and told him the story. He said, oh, God, oh, Art, God, what am I going to do? Don't sell me. What am I going to do? I said, are you a sissy? He said, no. I said, why does this guy think you're a sissy? He said, I don't know. And then I looked at Penn for the first time in that way. I looked at his arms and I saw the hairs. He had full, pretty lips like a woman, blue eyes, blonde hair. He was really beautiful. He said, oh, help me, man, please. Don't sell me. I said, how could I sell you? You don't belong to me. He said, you're my friend. Help me. I said, well, you better talk to this guy who says he's a friend of yours. And I told him what Bob had said. We both went to Bob. We told him, man, you can't do that. Bob said to Penn, look it. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll sell you to the guy. We'll get the bread. And then we'll kill the guy. Penn looked at me, and I looked at him, and we both looked at this other cat. I told Penn, come here, man, come here. We left Bob. I took Penn to the lifer. I told him, man, this guy's name is Penn. My name is Pepper. I ran down the whole trip. He's married. We're like next to each other in our names. We were chained together. We were celled together. We became friends. He likes jazz. I play jazz. We became friends. He's not a fruiter. I don't make it with fruiters. I talked and I talked and I talked so well, and we were so open and honest with the cat that he finally realized what was happening. Then we told him about this other cat, Bob. We found out later that Bob was the guy that had developed this thing. He said to me, I'm sorry. I was told that that was what was going on. Bob is going to hear about this. 3 days later, Bob was transferred to Vacaville. He had asked for a transfer. The guy had drove on him with a shank. From then on, the guy became a good friend of Penn's and a good friend of mine. He started coming around, listening to jazz. This was a guy that had never had anything going for him. We started eating with him sometimes. And so he acquired a couple of friends, out of the whole thing.